Hello, this is Dale Mahalko. I've discovered a problem with old computer systems that people should be aware of that may be causing you to experience errors that are mysterious and aren't actually being caused in the way that you would normally expect. I've discovered that disks are developing a problem where the magnetic media is flaking off of the disk and sticking to the drive mechanism. And then when you insert a disk that's good, you can't read the disk because your drive mechanism has been fouled by the bad disk. I want to make a demonstration of this here. This is a Apple II GS with the two 5 1/4 inch drives. The circuit boards have been removed from the drive and then reconnected in a way so that we can see the internal mechanisms and access the internal mechanisms even with the system powered on. This is a blank disk that I'm using as a demonstration, and I'm going to do what's called a certification scan with a copy program. And what this does is it writes a magnetic pattern to each track of the disk, and then it tries to read it back and make sure it's okay. So we'll start the certification. And up here, when it's successful, it shows a period on the screen. This is also doing writing to the half tracks, which is a halfway point between the two normal disk tracks. Half tracks and quarter tracks are not normally used on Apple II disks, but they were used by some special copy protected programs years ago. So what this shows here is that as we get through here, there's no problems. Everything's fine. All right, so I'm going to take this disk out, and now I'm going to put in a special disk here that I discovered. This is a Memorex. It's a single-sided flexible disk. I don't recall what this was, but it's not really important anymore. So we're going to certify this disk, which will erase it, and there's nothing on it. I don't care. So start the certification. Now, you see, when this one is doing it, it's failing. It's printing an X on the screen for every track of the disk. So basically, this disk is bad. There's something wrong. The entire media is unreadable. All right, now let's take that out. Go back to our original test disk again. And let's do a certify of that disk. But what? The entire disk is failing again. It can't read any track. So a disk that was previously good only a few seconds ago is now completely unreadable. Every track is a complete failure. And in fact now, any disk that I put in this drive is unreadable because this bad disk over here, the magnetic media, is coming apart and rubbing off on the drive mechanism. It fouled the drive head. And taking apart Apple II drives is really challenging. It's quite difficult to get inside of an Apple II drive, and that's specifically why this is disassembled here, so that I can examine this problem. So what I've got here are little alcohol prep pads that are used for people that have to do insulin injections. And tear open a pack, pull out one of the pre-moistened wipes here, and now we're going to go over to our drive 2, lift up the little drive pressure pad, and wipe the drive head with the alcohol pad, okay? And when we look at this and we pick it up, there's nothing on here. Can't see anything on here. We'll just wait a few seconds for that to dry. That should be long enough. All right, so let's put our test disk back in that we originally started with. Was good, failed completely, and let's check it again. Oh, now it's working again. So where we just previously could not access it at all, every track was unreadable, now it's passing with no problems whatsoever. And I've discovered that some disks, which I've actually had trouble reading in the past, if I wipe down the drive head like this, suddenly all the errors go away on the disk. It's just fine. So you may have disks lurking in your floppy collection that are degrading and basically poisoning the drive mechanism. And it's funny, years ago, companies used to sell these little cleaning discs that had like a, there was like, rather than a disc inside, it would actually have a spinning pad material. And at the time, it didn't really seem all that important. It didn't seem like it really did anything. But now that actually might actually be useful. But there is a problem where potentially that cleaning disc might become saturated because it's always rubbing the same area on the drive head. Eventually, that pad may become contaminated to the point where you're not really effectively cleaning the drive anymore. And really, your only option is to just get a box of these alcohol swabs and periodically clean your drives. But like I say, with these Apple II drives, these are really hard to tear apart. There's a lot of screws, and it's generally not easy to work on these with them apart. There is a risk here of shorting out the circuit board. So actually what I've done is I took some other discs that I don't need, and I'm using those discs taped underneath here as an insulator to entirely cover the bottom of the circuit board and tape it with electrical tape so that none of the bottom of the circuit board traces can touch the metal across the back of these drives. But so this is a problem that you need to be aware of when you're working with old technology like this. Also, there's one other problem I'd like to demonstrate to you. Not only is the magnetic media failing, but also the disk sleeve itself is starting to fail. When you put a disk in a computer, it generally should not make any noise when it's spinning. So here's what it sounds like with no disk. Okay, so it's fairly quiet. And this is the disk that I have been using, and I'll put that in. The sound that comes from the drive is a very quiet, even sound. Really all you're hearing is the drive motor spinning and the little stepper motor moving the head back and forth in little steps. However, there are disks that are starting to develop a problem here. And let me put in this one as an example. Let's see if I can remember this command. Yep, there we go. Okay, so I put in the assembly language command that tells the drive to start spinning. And if you listen quietly here, I'll be quiet here, the disk is not making just a steady quiet sound, but it's actually making like a repeating shh 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 sound. And what this sound is the sound of the disk rubbing against the inside envelope of the floppy disk. And the reason this is happening is because if we take apart this disk and look inside here, this is rather mysterious. What's with these colors, these patterns on here? Well, the insides of this were originally white when this was new, but it looks like it's probably made out of paper, the inside lining, and it's basically oxidizing. Where oxygen is getting inside here, it's slowly turning this brown. And I've seen some discs where basically the entire inside of this has turned brown. And there's really Nothing that you can do about that when it happens. Here's one that's much more severe. And the reason that it's changing color like this is that the air easily gets in around these openings, but not so easily where the disc material is covering up the lining inside. So this one is pretty far gone here. You don't want your floppy disk to make any noise. This material like this, it's basically turning rough like sandpaper, and it may potentially cause damage to discs. So if you can find some old discs that are quiet, and if you can peek inside and look through the hole and you see that the inner lining is still good, I would recommend cutting the edge off and using that as a sleeve for your good discs so that you don't damage your good discs that still have stuff you want inside a sleeve that is going to hack on you here. So I hope this might be helpful to someone using their old antique computer.